see. Okay, so welcome to Parent Conversations. We are very excited to have our guest speaker with us today. He's going to be talking about a process and really the core of what it is that we do with My Discovery Destination and the Discovery Family Coalition. This is actually, he's kicking off a series of parent conversations that will really go over the why of why we exist and why we do what we do, and kind of the interesting facts behind the fun, because we know, I mean, our goal is to help families have fun and just really enjoy spending time together. But there's so much more behind that. There is a real reason why we want families to be together and families to spend that time. And so we have David Watkins here with us to introduce the science of prevention. I first met David when he was here at the Bear River Health Department and running the coalition here, and did an amazing job with that. And we worked together on a couple of projects. I learned a ton from him, had the opportunity to meet with him before he moved on to bigger and better things. And he actually contributed in a very significant way to the Discovery Family Adventures. For those of you that have been enjoying the Discovery Family Adventures, when you see the tips section, teaching important parenting strategies, David had a reel that actually was a suggestion from him. And so thank you, David, for contributing to, to the Discovery Family Adventures and the fun that we have for our families. David has now moved on. He is the regional director over the, actually, I'll have David, if you could maybe tell us a little bit more about the specific areas that you cover and what it is that you do. But I saw him, he gave a presentation during the Youth Leadership Conference that we were able to attend recently. And it was a lot of fun and very informative in a fun way, which is what we like to do, provide information in a fun way. So we asked him to come be a part of our parent conversations. So David, I'm going to turn the time over to you.
Sounds good. That's a lot of credit. I don't know if I deserve that much credit for that. Shirley's obviously the genius behind the My Discovery Destination stuff. So, but I'll take credit, I guess, if you want me to.
Definitely your credit on that tip section, which is one of my favorite sections, and from the feedback we're getting from parents, one of their favorite sections. So thank you.
Well, that's
David.
good to hear. Are you all seeing my screen now?
Yes, we are.
Okay, awesome. So I'll introduce, add to that introduction a little bit. I'm David Watkins. I am a regional prevention director for the state prevention system. I'm housed out of Weaver Human Services in Ogden, but I cover a region from Davis County through Weaver, Morgan County, and then the Bear River Health District, which is Cass, Rich, and Box Elder counties. And I get the privilege of working with the prevention coordinators. Our prevention system split up into 13 areas across the state. So just like the Bear River Health Department covers 3 counties, there's 13 of those districts across the state. I work with 3 of the prevention coordinators that oversee 3 of those local communities in Davis County North. And I've been doing prevention work. I started at the Bear River Health Department about 10 years ago almost, and I've been a regional director for about 1.5 years now. And it's awesome, and I get to talk about prevention and the prevention science. I will say this presentation, like Shirley said, was originally given to youth. And so a lot of this is going to be geared maybe towards youth, but I've tried to tailor some of it, particularly towards the end, towards what we can do as parents, or what does this all mean for us as parents. So hopefully that'll be worthwhile and important to My Discovery Destinations and to you all as parents who are on this call today. I took a little bit different. Youth, it was a virtual conference. It's like, how can we keep youth engaged in an hour-long presentation and teach them some things that are relatively boring, right? A textbook, here's a lecture on prevention science. And so I did it through mountain biking. I don't know if any of you all mountain bike or ride a bike or been on a bike, but I like to mountain bike. So I threw in some things about mountain biking, and I actually have a video that we'll see here in a minute of me kind of teaching about risk and protective factors for mountain biking. And that's where we'll kind of start. There we go. So here's some pictures of me, just so you can get to know me first. This isn't a picture of me. This is a picture of my bike. But this is me and my son out mountain biking on Antelope Island. So I've been around the state and mountain bike several different areas. This is actually Thunder Mountain Trail down by Bryce Canyon. Amazing trail. If you ever get the opportunity to even just hike that trail, it's well worth the time. This is Antelope Island with me and my favorite mountain biking buddy and my son, who's also in the picture. We go everywhere. This is some of the prevention professionals in the state. We had a conference down in Bryce Canyon, and we, after the conference, went mountain biking. Many of us enjoy mountain biking, so we spent some time again on that Thunder Mountain Trail. Here's me getting ready to go on one of my favorite trails in the Logan area. This is Jardine Juniper for anybody up there in Logan. Great mountain biking trail. Here's me 20 feet later, wondering why I even mountain bike. And then here's my family, just so you can kind of get an idea of who I am and why I even worry about prevention, why I mountain bike to stay in shape, why I get out. And it's really these individuals here, my wife and my 3 kids. They all had birthdays. They're all 10, below the age of 10, 10, 7, and 5. And that's the time to do prevention, is early on when they're young. And so, you know, I'm getting into that age range where it's time to start having all these conversations that I've been teaching about for 10 years. And it's kind of exciting for me to be in that age range. But this is why I do prevention. And this is why I like to teach communities and parents and youth about prevention, because it all has an effect on my family. Prevention is community-wide, and so anything I can do to increase that prevention is going to increase the likelihood that my children avoid substance misuse and other problem behaviors as well. So let's get into it. This is, if it'll play, this is some video found on YouTube, and it might not, it's not going to play. Here we go. They call it Friday Fails. So I titled my presentation, Less Friday Fails, More Saturday Sends. In the mountain biking world, they have this hashtag Friday Fails. That's where everybody shows all their pictures of them crashing. And so this is what I would take as maybe the fails in prevention, or someone becoming addicted to a substance. And so we'll just watch a few of these, and I'm going to ask you a question. And I realized you probably can't hear my sound, huh? Hold on just a second. All right.
Yeah, now we've got sound.
Oh, sorry. Maybe we'll just skip this. I keep hitting the wrong button.
Hi.
All right, we'll stop there. What are some things, so you've just seen a bunch of crashes on this video here. What are some things that we might do to prevent crashes on a mountain bike? Any thoughts? You can either just unmute yourself and chime in, or you can go ahead and type it in the chat, whichever you're more comfortable with. What might we do to prevent a mountain bike crash? Or a crash on a bike in general?
Well, I was glad to see that they were wearing helmets, but that doesn't really prevent the crash. Maybe it prevents them from breaking their head open.
Yeah, awesome. So a helmet, maybe we throw that around a lot for prevention, but like you said, it's probably not doing a whole lot to prevent the crash. What else might we do?
Don't try a trail that's above your skill level.
Yeah, so stay within your skill level. That might mean a little bit of education up front, like knowing what trail ratings even mean, knowing, you know, what my ability is as a biker. Yeah. There's probably some other things. Oftentimes in prevention, when I ask this question, particularly with mountain biking or biking in general, the helmets come up, right? Helmets, number one thing. What can we do to prevent crashes? Helmets. Like Shirley just mentioned, that probably isn't preventing the crash. The other things that might come up in a biking community would be wear gloves or wear your knee pads, shoulder pads. And I like to use this as an example for what we mean when we talk about prevention, because everybody uses the word prevention, but I don't think a lot of people quite grasp. I was in a meeting this morning, and even there, I don't think everybody quite grasps what prevention actually means. And so prevention means stopping something before it ever happens, right? So if I'm stopping the spread of chickenpox or stopping chickenpox, I'm ensuring that no one gets the chickenpox before they have it. Or if I'm stopping or preventing heart disease, I'm preventing anybody from ever having heart disease. Sometimes in substance misuse prevention, though, we're thinking way more what's called downstream versus what we in prevention call upstream. And we're focused here on the strategies like helmet or mountain bike gloves or the pads, and not more upstream that's going to stop people from even falling into the river. And so a mountain bike helmet, it all's in the wording that we use. A mountain bike helmet is going to prevent head damage, right? So if my whole goal is to eliminate head or brain damage from mountain bike crashes, I might suggest wearing a helmet. That might be a strategy, and that might work for me in most cases. Same thing with the gloves. If I'm trying to prevent hand bruises or scrapes on the hand, if I wear gloves, I'm going to prevent those things. Knee pads, elbow pads, same thing. I'm preventing broken bones. I'm preventing maybe a lengthy stay in the hospital. I'm preventing injury. But I've done nothing to address this idea of, well, how can I prevent a crash from even happening in the first place? Now, we would never say, hey, I'm a good mountain biker. I'm excellent. I don't need to wear my helmet because I'm just that good. We would never say that, right? No matter how good a biker is, we always say, hey, wear your helmet. Because sometimes we just might crash. No matter how good we are, we just might crash, and these things prevent serious injury. But it would be better if more mountain bikers took skills classes or education classes and learned about their biking habits to eliminate or reduce the number of actual crashes that happen. So we're going to watch this video, and this video is a video of me at a bike park going through some of the risk and protective factors as it relates to crashing on a mountain bike. And then we're going to come back and we're going to relate that to substance misuse a little bit more. So this is about 5 minutes. The sound got a little bit off. So if you need to turn your sound up on your computer, that might be the best way to be able to hear this video, as it might be a little bit quiet. Sorry for the poor audio right here. It didn't pick up on the mic due to the wind. I'm just introducing who I am and saying that we're going to go on a prevention about how to prevent mountain bike crashes. And then we're going to relate that back to substance misuse prevention. So let's go for that ride. Maybe turn your volume up a little bit. All right, we've come to an interesting point in the trail here I wanted to point out. Sometimes when we're riding our mountain bikes, we get to a situation and the trail is relatively smooth. But other points in the trail have little gardens. They're relatively hard to make it through. They can be difficult and they cause a potential risk for crashing. If I just go right through here, my tire might get caught depending on how big the rocks are and how many boulders there are. Sometimes in situations like this with the rock garden, there might be a clear path through there, and I'm able to avoid most of the major rocks, and I can kind of see where to go, and I avoid the risk of crashing. Other times there's what's called a ride around. I can go completely around it on smooth dirt, and again, avoid the risk of crashing. But oftentimes I'm in a section of trail where there's just so many rocks, there's no way of avoiding all of them, and so I'm at a higher risk of crashing in those situations, whether I'm going uphill, downhill, or if it's a flat surface like here. But there's a few things that help or might protect against some of these things, or protect against crashing. One of those things is maybe having a good solid bike. I'm riding a hardtail here. You might have a full suspension bike, which makes it a little bit easier to make it through. You might have wider tires than what I have. Is again a protective factor for making it through a big rock garden. You also might have taken a riding class or practice riding through smaller rock gardens and worked your way up. And so there's some things we can do to protect ourselves from the risk of crashing, but these rocks and rock gardens and trails or roots or other things pose risk for me crashing.
sometimes when I'm mountain biking, I might come to an obstacle like this skinny here that maybe I'm just not prepared to ride yet. And I might fall victim to risk of crashing because I'm riding with friends that maybe push me or coax me to say, oh, you can make it, you got that, just send it. And that may lead to me thinking, oh yeah, I can do that, and I try it and I crash. And so I might fall victim to peer pressure. I also might come to a situation like this, and I haven't been riding for very long, but I think, you know what, that's not that difficult. That doesn't look that bad. It's not that high off the ground. And I might just try it anyway, even though I have no skills and haven't practiced on anything any easier. And so I perceive that the risk of the obstacle isn't as tough or as hard as it is. I've seen hundreds of YouTube videos. Surely I should be able to do it. And so those type of things put me at risk for crashing. Some things that might protect here in a situation like this is riding with friends who know your limits. So even though you might think that you can send it, knowing your limits and having friends that can say, hey, I saw you last week and you can't handle this, so you should maybe think about riding around. So riding with friends that know you, know your limits, and can help you or help you practice in situations like this will help you avoid crashing on a mountain biking trail. Let's go one more spot and then we'll wrap up here at the mountain bike park and head back over to the Zoom meeting. All right, so we just learned some skills to help us avoid crashing when we're riding our bikes. If we know the terrain, have the proper equipment, understand some of the risk factors on the trail, plus knowing our limits and riding with those that help us understand our limits, we can avoid crashing on our mountain bikes and have a fun, safe time riding our bikes. Unlike me while filming this video, who was not safe and did not follow his limits. Let's head back to the Zoom video and we can learn how this all relates to substance misuse prevention.
All right, did y'all see the crash there at the end? So hopefully now, if we were living in a town where there was just tons of mountain biking crashes, we have some ideas on maybe what we might do to eliminate some of these crashes. Some of those things might be, maybe it's trail work. Maybe the trails that are in our area are just, they're poorly built and they're just set up to cause crashes. Some of those might be making sure that everybody that's riding in our community has the proper bike or proper equipment. And it might be offering courses or mountain biking skills classes to everybody in the community to help them see and learn the skills that they need to be able to ride on the trail successfully. The other things might be educating, hey, don't fall into peer pressure, right? Just because your friends can maybe ride something, that doesn't mean that you're able to ride it. So knowing what your limits are and knowing, don't fall into peer pressure just because someone else can do it doesn't mean that you can do it. All of those things might be things that we as prevention workers might do in this community to help prevent future crashes from happening. And all of those things would probably work to reduce if we had a high number of crashes. Well, does that work in prevention? We're here hopefully to learn about prevention, substance misuse prevention or other problem behavior prevention. And all we've done here now for 22 minutes is learn about mountain biking and how to prevent mountain biking crashes. But to prevent mountain biking crashes is all related to reducing risk. We're able to reduce risk in the trail or reduce risk by teaching skills, or enhance protection by increasing the bike or the level of the bike or the ability to resist peer pressure. I add this protection to it. Both of those things are going to prevent crashes. Both of those things work in prevention as well. So if I want to prevent somebody from ever starting using substances, it all relates to reducing risk factors and increasing protective factors. And that's what we're going to hit in. We're going to take a time out now and we're going to shift and we're going to focus the rest of the time all on substance misuse prevention and how it relates back to this mountain biking course and the risk there. So on our trail, we had what I called was a rock garden. And this rock garden here, I didn't even try to attempt to ride through this one. There's some pretty big rocks in here, but all of these rocks represent risk factors. So low neighborhood attachment might be a risk factor for someone using substances or engaging in other problem behaviors. Maybe this is getting involved in a gang, maybe it's stealing, maybe it's something else, but some sort of a problem behavior, we're going to focus on substance misuse. What's low neighborhood attachment? Well, that means that I don't necessarily feel safe in my community. I wouldn't necessarily just walk around my community all alone because I don't feel safe. Maybe there's a lot of people moving in and out of my community. There's a lot of transition. And if I'm asked, would I miss my community if I moved? And I said no, then that probably means that I'm living in an area that, at least for me, I have low neighborhood attachment to. And so if I'm attached to my neighborhood, I feel connected to it, I'm less likely to engage in drugs or alcohol. But when I have that low attachment, it's a risk factor for me. Another rock or boulder in my way or risk factor might be this high outlet density. So policy work is a really important part of prevention work, and it's something that we all can do as parents, is know and understand the laws of our community, and then work to either keep the strong laws that we have or work to enhance the weak laws that we have. And so one of those is this outlet density. I'm in a community and there's just tons of alcohol outlets. So whether that's a convenience store, whether that's bars, whether that's whatever it is, just places to get alcohol. If there's a bunch of those in my community, the youth in my community are much more at risk of using alcohol than in a community that has none of these outlets. And so a lot of communities have zoning laws. The state of Utah has zoning laws on where and how close these outlets can be to schools and to residential neighborhoods, and how close they can be to one another. So there can only be so many outlets next to each other. Those laws help protect our youth. Another one that might be a risk factor for me, and this is something that we as parents can work on and address and increase, or decrease, is family conflict or poor family management. If I'm in a family where we're always fighting, we're always arguing over something, or a family where it's hard to just figure out how to get the kids to school on time, and there's just management issues as a family, those increase again those risks for youth in using substances. And another example might be a family history of antisocial behavior, a family history of drug use, or a family history of stealing, or whatever it is, whatever the family history is, but just a history of engaging in antisocial behavior increases the likelihood that a youth in that family might engage in substance misuse or other antisocial behaviors. So again, this is something that we can work on as a family to maybe address or be aware of. Sometimes in a trail, I'm unable to remove these boulders. Like, they're just there, they're meant to be there, and I can't get rid of them. If I'm born into a family that had alcoholism as a risk factor, there's nothing I can do about that. I can't remove that boulder from my life, but maybe there's some things on the protective side that I can do to reduce the risk of having that risk factor in my life. But I can't remove it. It's just always going to be there. If I move into a new community, I just moved 3 kids into a new community. There's nothing I can do about how many alcohol outlets are there when I move in, but maybe I can work to ensure that no new ones come in, or as stores close, that no new ones replace them. And so over time, I can eliminate the number of outlets there. And so prevention works to reduce these or to do things that might counter them. The more of these in my path, the more likely I am to eventually fall into substance misuse. And so the smoother I can make my path, the less likely that is to happen. I really like the alcohol density really shows this really well. And so this is communities in California. I'm going to show 3 of these communities. The yellow and blue dots represent alcohol density. And then the orange space here, you can see my mouse, here is the area that's like the city. So a definition of a city there, or a community there. And you can see here that this community has only 4 outlets in it. It's not a very dense city. They're spread out. It's very possible I might grow up in this community and never see an alcohol outlet. But this community, same area, same part of California, neighboring community, this community has way more. And if you think about if I live down here, maybe I don't have very many risk factors of these alcohol outlets. But up here, if I'm living over here, or if I have to commute through here to get to school or to work, I'm seeing a ton of these outlets. And this community is actually the one with the most. It's a small area, and on almost every major street, there's just tons of these outlets. And so it's very likely that anybody living in these areas probably has to pass many of these alcohol outlets to get to school or to work or to wherever they're going, a friend's house. And so the ones most likely to misuse are probably the ones living in this community, whereas the ones living in this community are very unlikely to use. Does it mean that these have no risk? Absolutely not. Everybody has some risk, but their risk because of alcohol density is very, very low. Whereas this one, because of their density of alcohol outlets, is very much at risk. We had other risk factors on the trail, and I want to point out this isn't an extensive list of risk factors. There's some researchers out there, Richard Catalano and Dr. Hawkins. They've developed what's called the Communities That Care process, and they've identified, I believe it's 26 risk and protective factors. And so there's 26 of these factors that have been proven to increase the likelihood of problem behaviors of substance misuse. And I'm just giving you a few of these here. So remember the skinny, when I'm mountain biking, this might be because of peer pressure. Hey, you can make it, no problem, you got this. Or it might be because of my perception. I perceive, hey, it's not that high, it's not that skinny, I got this. I've seen many videos. And so perception and peer pressure play a huge role in risk of crashing. They also play a huge role in my risk of substance misuse. One of those might be rewards for antisocial behavior. If I'm a bully in a school, and it might be inadvertent, but if I'm a bully in a school and I feel somewhat rewarded for that, somehow the other kids look up to me, somehow the teachers maybe give me extra special attention or whatever it is, inadvertently, I feel kind of rewarded for bullying other kids, I'm much more likely to continue to bully. Same thing with other substance misuse. I might feel rewarded for the negative behavior I'm engaging in. Another risk factor, again, is that peer pressure. If I have friends who are using substances, me being around them really increases the likelihood that I'm going to misuse substances. That's why it's so important for us as parents to know the friends that our kids hang out with, get to know their families as well, and know kind of what their standards are, because friends play a huge role in the decision of teens misusing substances. And again, if I have friends that are using, it's possible my child might be a good example in their life and get them out of using substances, but it's also possible that they'll be the bad influence on my child and they'll end up using because they have a group of friends that are using. I guess same thing along the lines, if I have friends that they might not be using drugs, but they're just engaged in other antisocial behaviors. This is maybe where gang involvement, if I get involved in like a gang or just a group of kids that are, they're tagging the school wall after school or they're skipping class a lot, it increases my risk for engaging in all of those behaviors as well. And the last example that I'll use here is this perceived risk of drugs. So when youth think drugs will cause them a lot of harm, they're very unlikely to misuse substances. They get it, they're smart, they understand, oh, that's dangerous to me, I probably shouldn't do that. But if they perceive use of a substance as not being very risky, that's when their use increases. So the substance that's increased a lot recently is vaping, right? Vaping is probably the #1 drug of choice across the state of Utah. And why is that? It's because it's new, and it's because teens don't think it's risky. They don't think that there's health consequences associated with it. They don't think there's addiction consequences associated with it. And oftentimes they're like, I'm not even vaping nicotine, I'm just vaping water or whatever. And so some solution, some flavored solution. And so their risk, they don't see it as risky, then that's when substance misuse increases. And that's exactly what we've seen in Utah with vaping. Marijuana might be another good example of this. Maybe the perception that teens get in the media is it's a medicine, it can be used for all of these different things. It's a natural herb, it's a plant. All of these things might play into this role that youth might think, oh, it's not addictive, it's not going to cause me any harm, there's no risk in using it. And so that's when we start to see maybe marijuana use increase as well. And so perception of risk plays a huge role if teens use or not. Just like if I perceive this as not being risky for crashing, I'm going to try it on my mountain bike. Here's a picture. This is the extent of my artist ability in PowerPoint. These represent individuals. The red dots don't represent chickenpox. They represent risk factors. And so here, this individual is like our community that didn't have very many alcohol outlets. This individual maybe has 1 or 2 risk factors. Very unlikely that they might go on to misuse substances. But as we move down, these individuals get more and more risk factors. And the more risk factors an individual has, the more likely they are to go on to misuse substances. And I just noticed that there's some chats going on, so let me check that real quick. Should have had this open to begin with. Okay, I don't think there's anything for me. If you have questions as we go throughout, feel free to either just unmute yourself and chime in or type it in the chat. I'll try to keep a watch on that. So now let's jump to protective factors. On the mountain biking trail, we said that the protective factors were maybe having a good quality bike, maybe a rear suspension, front suspension, having wider tires. All of those things help protect me when I'm riding down a really rocky trail. Well, for prevention, there's some things that really help protect youth from getting involved in substance misuse or other problem behaviors. One of those, and probably maybe the most strong protective factor out there, is family attachment. We showed earlier that family conflict increases risk, but if my youth feel attached to me, if they want to hang out with me, if my children like spending time with dad, like spending time with mom, they feel like they can talk to mom or dad or their guardian or whoever's in charge of them, that is a really strong protective factor. I don't know if you've all heard of Parents Empowered, but Parents Empowered is a media campaign across the state aimed at reducing underage drinking. And their whole campaign centers around this idea of building this family attachment or this bonding. And parents are the #1 reason children choose not to drink. Obviously, something else, the #1 reason they do choose to drink, but when parents are attached to their youth and they set really strong, clear, no underage drinking, no substance misuse rules, youth are virtually unlikely to ever misuse substances. But it all starts with having that really strong family attachment, enjoying spending time with your child, doing things that they like to do, and providing an environment where they feel safe talking to us. And we have those lines of communication open up are essential to building this family attachment and protecting our youth. Another one might be just opportunities for prosocial involvement. So when I say prosocial involvement, I mean being engaged in a good cause, a positive cause. It might be community service. It might be an activity at the school. This could even be as simple as, you know, the piano lessons that they're taking. It could be the sports team that they're on. It can be within the family. So does my child have an opportunity to help our family out? Do they have chores? Do they have dishes that they're responsible to get done? Do they have the assignment to help a younger sibling with homework? What is the prosocial involvement at the family level our children can be doing? But then it's also more complex than that. There's opportunities at the school level. There's opportunities at the community level as well. And there's even opportunities with their friends. Do their friends do prosocial things, and are they engaged in it? And so having these opportunities to do positive things in their community or their family or their school is important. And this, I think, is really, really key to these opportunities. One, it's very important to get our kids involved in activities, but it's really important to reward them when they do engage in these activities. So many times our youth are maybe engaged in a good cause, doing something really positive, and we don't recognize that. We don't, you know, say, hey, that was awesome that you did that. Our communities, maybe our city council doesn't say, hey, kids, thanks for coming out to our cleanup day that we had. They take time to recognize those little things. The schools can do the same thing and recognize youth. And sometimes this is really easy on sports teams. Maybe the sports star gets all this recognition, but what about the kid that was the last one off the bench? Like, how are we rewarding him? How do we reward the kid that's not involved in any extracurricular activities, but does something in the school? Like, how does a teacher maybe find a way to reward them for the little prosocial things that they're engaged in? So finding those things is important. So this is just a quick example of some of the risk or the protective factors that may play a role in helping to protect our youth. I like to use this picture to illustrate that I might have all the protection in the world. I might have, you know, I'm always doing, I've taken the mountain biking classes, I have the best bike in the world, but if the risk is too great, I'm still going to fall. In this situation, maybe this skinny just gets too skinny and I can't really balance on it. The risk was just too much. Protective factors only work to a certain point. If a youth has too many risk factors, if they have family conflict, if they have academic failure, if they have a low neighborhood attachment, if they just have a ton of these risk factors, it doesn't matter how many protective factors I try to give that child, there's just not enough room for them to avoid all of the risk. So that's why in prevention, we focus heavily on reducing risk to allow room for the protective factors to filter in. And hopefully you picked up on a lot of the protective factors are the opposite of the risk factors. So if I'm working with a child who has high family conflict, I can't just go to those parents and be like, hey, you need to spend more time with your child. Like, they may or may not do it because they have other issues that they're trying to work through to be able to deal with the family conflict. And so we have to address the family conflict before we can maybe address the family bonding type of thing. So they kind of work against each other. So here's an example of this. If I'm at low risk, if I just have a couple of risk factors, but maybe I only have a couple of protective factors as well, they might cancel each other out. So I'm protected, right? I have enough protection to keep me from using substances. My risk wasn't that great. But if I move over to this side of the equation and I got 15 risk factors, one, there's just not a lot of room for protective factors. And two, the protective factors that I have aren't going to do nearly enough to cancel out the risk factors that I have. Okay. So we're going to skip the pop quiz. This was specifically for the youth. Youth love quizzes, so I thought I would throw that in there. We'll skip this. Hopefully what you've learned to this point is that there's risk and protective factors. Prevention focuses on those risk and protective factors. We want to reduce risk and we want to increase protective factors. What leads to substance misuse is having these risk and protective factors. And so I mentioned upstream and downstream. Downstream approach to prevention would be pulling kids out of the stream once they've started using substances, right? So if a kid starts using substances, they say, hey, you need to take this education class, or you need to go to court, or whatever it is. That's a downstream approach. And that's never going to stop other kids from falling in the river. If I move more upstream and I build a fence, a protective fence, or I reduce the risk factors by building a fence, that keeps youth from ever falling into that stream. An example for a real life example, hopefully you're all familiar with the drug naloxone. Naloxone gets used a lot in our circles as this preventative drug. And some even tout it as this is the way that we're going to solve our opioid crisis, is by just giving everybody this naloxone drug, which reverses overdoses and saves lives. Well, the problem with that is naloxone is effective for preventing death. And again, like the bike helmet, we need that in our communities. I'm not saying get rid of naloxone, but if our goal is to reduce overdoses to begin with, and all I'm doing, the only strategy I'm doing in my community is passing out naloxone kits, I'm never going to reduce the number of overdoses. I will be successful at reducing overdose deaths, and that's a positive thing. But to me, prevention is more about, well, let's stop that. Let's stop all overdoses from happening to begin with. And to do that, we focus on, again, those risk and protective factors. We can increase those protective factors, decrease risk factors in our community. We'll have yet less youth that ever begin using, which leads to less adult use, which leads to less need for overdose reversal drugs. So how do we prevent substance misuse? Risk and protective factors. Hopefully that's hitting home. If we want to reduce substance misuse, we address risk and protective factors. I'll throw a shout out here to coalitions. Coalitions in our state are how we address risk and protective factors. And so if you're curious about a coalition in your community, you can reach out to me maybe after this presentation, and I can get you lined up with the prevention coordinator in your area who can get you connected with that coalition. But those coalitions are how we identify and address risk and protective factors for prevention. Shirley, yeah, did you have a question or a comment?
No, I was just going to point out, Emily pointed out here in the comments that, she was talking, we were talking about the risky behaviors. And she talked about how, low commitment to school and to the clubs and whatnot. And that really is a direct direct opposite of the protective factors that we usually focus on. So I was thinking in terms of protective factors because we focus on increasing that high commitment. But they really are just opposite of each other. If we can put in the protective factor in many situations, we're decreasing the risk factor. Although not always, there are some that that stand on their own. But anyway.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for summarizing that for me. So prevention, risk and protective factors. And then who do we target in prevention? Really who we target is anybody who hasn't started using yet. So it could be an adult, 70 years old. We can do prevention to help that 70-year-old individual not ever start using. But most of the time when we're talking prevention, we're talking teenagers, we're talking youth who haven't started yet. And again, prevention can start, I have a 5-year-old as my youngest. Prevention starts then. Prevention starts when they're 0, right? So much of our development happens in that 0 to 3 age range. Youth who are raised in good, positive environments go on to have less risk later on. There's a program called the Nurse Family Partnership, and it's all about ensuring that single mothers get the resources that they need to ensure that their child from 0 to 2 gets all the care that they need. And this program, it's all about home visits is what it does, has been proven to reduce substance misuse. So you think about that, a program that is only received for 2 years between the ages of 0 to 2 for that child ends up meaning that that child is less likely to use as an adult, as a teenager. There's another program called the Good Behavior Game. That's a classroom program that's delivered in 2nd grade. And when youth in that program get that program in 2nd grade, again, for their whole life, they have much less likelihood of misusing substances. And so again, early on in the years is where prevention happens. We tend to focus on the teenage years, the adolescent years, because we know if we can prevent use then, we almost eliminate adult use. I was talking with some youth this morning and there's some stats. 99% of today's smokers started before the age of 26. 90% of them started before the age of 18. I like that stat, that 99% started before age 26, because when's the brain fully developed? Age 25 or 26 or 27, somewhere in there, right? And so if we can prevent use while the brain's developing as teenagers, we practically eliminate any adult use. And so that's why we target individuals who haven't started using yet, which is often teenagers or adolescents. So I'm going to skip these. These were some scenarios that we used in the youth summit to get the youth thinking about, does this person have risk? Does this person not have risk? What are the risk factors they're seeing? I'm going to skip them. I don't think that they have as much application to you all as adults, but I did want to focus on this. What can I do as a parent? How can I help my child? How can I help the kids in my neighborhood? How can I help the kids that are going to my school or the school that my kids are going to avoid substances? What can I do as a parent? So hopefully you've learned a few things. Number one is bond with your children. Spend time with your children. Have a good, strong family attachment with your child. For a broader prevention sense, be involved in your community. You know the laws about alcohol, tobacco, e-cigarettes in your community. Know is our park smoke free? Is the county fair or the city fair, is that supposed to be smoke free? Do those places allow alcohol? If they do allow alcohol, is it a beer garden that they allow? Like, know some of these laws, and if they're bad laws, like if it's just show up to the fair and everybody can have alcohol, work in that community to say, hey, a lot of kids are here. I don't think it's good that our kids are having this normalized view of everybody drinking. Can we do something about this? Number two would be involved in your child's education. So help your child see the value in the education that they're getting and help them be attached in some way to their schooling. A lot of times we talk about in prevention, couldn't we just do a reading program with kindergartners in first grade, and wouldn't that be better than a lot of the stuff that we do? It very well might be. Helping children, very young children, be on target academically is a great protective factor when it comes to substance misuse and other things. And so even a reading program, going to your child's school and doing the reading groups or whatever it is, being involved in PTA, those type of things help your child get the education that they need. And if they're struggling, I'm perfect worldview here, but I understand that children are all different, and some of them are just going to struggle in school. Work with your child's school. Like if they need a plan to be able to help them to be successful in the classroom, don't be afraid to reach out and get those plans set up for them. I know school districts are usually pretty helpful in trying to help all kids be successful in the classroom. Another aspect I want to go along with that is your children age and you have a good relationship with them, and you start to notice maybe they're feeling sad more often, or maybe they're feeling depressed, or you've noticed their grades are slipping a little bit. Don't be afraid to get them the help that they might need. It's better to help them get help early on, particularly with mental health issues, than to wait and just say, I think it might get better. Have an open conversation with your child, and it's not a big deal if they need to go to a counselor or seek counseling from somebody, and work until you get that. And too many times I hear parents say, well, I just can't get my child in anywhere. And a lot of that might be true, but work until you can get your child seen somewhere if they're particularly experiencing mental health issues. All right, hopefully you all have gotten IKEA furniture before, and they have awesome instructions, right? Usually not. Usually it's not very good, very vague. And we redid our kitchen, all IKEA cabinets. We got everything from IKEA, and we did it all ourselves. And let me tell you, it would have been better to watch some YouTube videos of others installing the cabinets before we did it versus just trying to read the instructions, because after we were done and all the pieces didn't fit and we couldn't figure out how, the molding was supposed to go on and those type of things, we went and watched the YouTube videos and were like, yeah, this is the trick to doing it. So parenting didn't come with an instruction booklet. The best parenting advice that we ever got, or that we usually get, is just the example that our parents set for us. And so sometimes it's best to get other education beyond that. And so what I'm saying here is that watching a YouTube video of someone else doing something is far better than just trying to do it based on the instructions here. We as parents, I think, in communities, we need to destigmatize parenting classes. I think we often think, parenting classes are for the parents that are struggling, or parenting classes are for the bad parents, maybe. I would like to suggest that parenting classes are for everybody. Again, none of us got a manual when we became parents. And there's little things, no matter how awesome of a parent we are, there's little things in these programs that we can pick up on that will help us as parents. The other reason I say we take parenting classes is because those classes, there's a few that have been proven, again, to reduce substance misuse. Just by us attending the class, whatever it is that we pick up in that class, it's proven that the youth that we have, our children, are less likely to misuse. And so attending those classes is vital. I get that time's hard. It's hard to carve out 2 hours for 6 weeks or 10 weeks or whatever the class might have, but they're well worth the time because we just pick up on things that help us. Some of the classes that I would suggest, there's a Strengthening Families program for ages 10 to 17. So if I have children between the ages of 10 to 17, this parenting class is awesome. There's one called Guiding Good Choices, another awesome parenting class that has been shown to reduce substance misuse. And a third one that's maybe more common in a lot of the places in Utah is Love and Logic. There's maybe less research with Love and Logic than there is with Guiding Good Choices or Strengthening Families, but still a very awesome parenting program. And so taking time to identify those and using them. And again, if you're looking to get connected to one of those programs, feel free to reach out to me or Shirley after this program, and we can get you connected to that. The last strategy I want to talk about is what's called the social development strategy. So if you remember, a couple of the protective factors that we had were opportunities for prosocial involvement and rewards for prosocial involvement. That's essentially what this social development strategy is. And I can implement this today in my family, no cost whatsoever, other than your hour of being here on this presentation. And what this is that we all want healthy behaviors, right? We want healthy behaviors for our children. The way to do that is setting clear standards. So us as parents setting a clear standard for our youth. Maybe it's, I think it's very wrong for you to drink underage. Might be a clear standard that I might have. If I as a parent am bonded to my child, when I set that clear standard, they're very likely to follow through with that clear standard, which will again lead to this healthy behaviors. So how do I bond with my child? That's this over here, keeping note of all the individual characteristics that every one of our children has. If I provide opportunities for my child to be engaged in something in our family, I teach them the skills so that they can do it successfully, and then I provide proper recognition for that, then they're bonded to me. They can bond to me, I can set those clear standards, and they'll have healthy behaviors. So what's an opportunity? If I'm a parent, I might give my children the opportunity to do the dishes. And that might be an opportunity. They're like, yeah, I don't want to do that. But if we teach them the skills, this is how you load the dishwasher.
Yeah, something. Okay.
Okay. So how we get our youth to bond again is through providing them opportunities, giving them the skills that they need to, sorry, I think my screen stopped sharing.
No, I can see it.
Oh, it was telling me it paused.
Yeah, no, it's there. It's not full screen. So let's go ahead and have you start. Yeah, let's when you get that going, let's have you start over so that we can then we'll just cut that part off.
You want me to start over where?
Just with what you were doing, and then we can, there we go, right there, and then just start there, and then we can cut that part off.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
All right, so the things that we can do to help our youth bond is by providing them opportunities in our family, teaching them skills to be able to engage in that opportunity, and then recognizing them when they complete it. So an opportunity I might give my youth is, or my child, is, hey, you're gonna do the dishes. From now on, that's your job, you're doing the dishes. And if I just say, hey, do the dishes, they might load the dishwasher, they put all the plastics on the bottom, they melt all the stuff that can't really be on the bottom, and they did a bad job, right? That's not gonna help them feel good about themselves. That's not gonna lead to bonding. But if they load the dishwasher, maybe they got one or two things out of place, and I can say, hey, next time, this is where this goes, this is where that goes. And I say, hey, awesome job doing the dishes tonight. They do it for a week. Maybe you take them out for ice cream saying, hey, awesome job doing the dishes this week. You did excellent. Everything was put in the right place. You did a fine job. That's when I'm providing them the opportunities. I've taught them the skill to successfully complete it. And then I'm giving them that proper recognition, again, which leads to this bonding. For a baby, I can do the same thing. If a baby's crying, I can pick up that baby. That's an opportunity for that baby to interact with me. And they, maybe they're learning the skill of how to love or how to feel loved. And that, holding them, hugging them, maybe gives them the recognition that they need or are seeking. Classroom, a teacher might implement this. There might be a class pet, a gerbil in the classroom. They might give every student in the class the opportunity to feed the gerbil in the classroom. And they teach them, you give them this much food every day and you give them this much water every day. And at the end of the week, the classroom gives a round of applause for every student that successfully, keeps the gerbil alive throughout the week. So again, this is a strategy that can be implemented now, today in our families that can reduce the risk of substance misuse and help our children bond to us so that we can set those clear rules, clear standards for our family, which will lead to healthy behaviors. This can go negative though too. I mentioned gangs a lot here, but isn't that essentially what a gang is too? Is providing opportunities, they're teaching skills, and there's some recognition for doing whatever that opportunity was within that gang, which creates bonding to the other gang members. And obviously the outcomes their clear standards are for negative behaviors, which maybe leads to unhealthy behaviors at the end of the day. And so this can be used in the opposite way as well. But if we can use it for the positive, we're helping our youth out. I want to end my presentation today with what I'm going to call the Cobra Effect. Or I'm not going to call it. There's this thing called the Cobra Effect. And the Cobra Effect essentially revolves around this idea that I'm doing something that I think is going to work, but then actually increases the problem. And so there was a community that they had a Cobra. They just had tons of Cobra in their community. And the government came in and said, I know how we're going to get rid of the Cobras. We're going to pay money to everybody who brings us a Cobra skin. In short time, all the Cobra skins will be gathered in and there won't be any Cobra problem. Well, the problem with that was everybody was getting paid for the Cobra skins, and so they opened up Cobra farms. So now all the wild Cobras that they originally had stayed wild and increased in population. The Cobra farms now were in full effect, and there was tons of Cobras, even more so than before. And everybody was collecting money from the government because the government said, hey, we'll pay for all the Cobra skins. Well, eventually the government got wise of this and was like, I see what you're doing. We're paying you too much. You're collecting the money, you got these farms going. Well, we're not going to pay anymore. No more money for Cobra skins. Well, now all the farmers aren't making money off the Cobra skins, and so they release their farmed Cobras into the wild. The wild Cobras are still there, and now this community just has a really big problem of all these Cobras. Sometimes in prevention, we do things that we think are going to work. We do things that we think will have success, but then they don't. They end up maybe backfiring or doing the wrong thing. For years and years, we used scare tactics as an option. We would maybe go into a school, maybe we do these mock crashes, or it's prom, and so we do a crash scene where we have these prom students who are drinking and they ended up in a crash. Those don't work. Those actually increase the problem. They have this Cobra effect. And so what I'm saying here is that it's really important to focus on the proven risk and protective factors to reduce substance misuse. And when we focus on those risk and protective factors, then we can be assured that our strategy is reducing risk. The best way to do that is through these coalitions that I mentioned earlier. They help identify proven programs that have been researched to show that they reduce specific risk and protective factors that we know, again, can reduce substance misuse. And so parenting programs are an excellent way for us to get the skills that we need as parents in the community. And then there's other ways, the social development strategy, ensuring that we're bonding with our kids and setting those clear standards, but providing them with the opportunities and the recognition and the skills that they need to be successful. So with that, are there any questions that I can answer about substance misuse prevention, the science, maybe what we can do as parents? And if not, maybe I'll end there. And I think you can all get my contact information from Cheryl Lee or from the My Discovery Destinations Facebook page, and I'm happy to answer questions offline as well, or get you connected with parenting classes, other prevention programs, and or coalitions in your community.
Excellent. Thank you so much, David. And yes, we will include David's contact information when we post this. We will, I apologize for the little interruption, and we will get these together. We'll get the two recordings together so that it's all in one. We are just so grateful that you came and shared this information with us, David. Thank you for the good work that you do. We are, as a coalition, we really focus on the parents and really helping parents with increasing those protective factors, reducing the risk factors. And that's going to be our focus next week, that we will look specifically on how the Discovery Family Adventures address these different things now that that David has presented to us and helped us to understand. So thank you for those of you that came, although you're not with us here at the end, but we will. Yeah, my apologies for that little interruption there. Not sure what happened, but we will get this put together. And thank you very much for everyone for being there.
Thank you.